What's going on, guys? This is Aaron from Departures Capital. This video is brought to you on behalf of Aftermath Silver, and we're here with John Feneck, CEO of Feneck Consulting and Portfolio Manager in the mining sector. We've had you on many times, John. Always love chatting about commodities, gold, silver, and all that. So, how are you doing?
All good. Thanks, Aaron. How about
Yes,
you?
so I'm great. Very happy with the price of gold. It hit an all-time high since we last had you on. Since then, it's pulled back a little bit, rebounded $100 per ounce since then. What are you doing to play gold right now?
Yeah, we did top out right at 2,800, tested 2,500 and held. I think that's really bullish. And then we are now, hitting slight resistance around that 2,650 level. We're about 2,645 as we record. So, I think, um, look, another run at 2,800 in Q1, not out of the cards at all. I think when you look at who is talking up gold at 3,000 an ounce, right now it's some top three of the top 10 U.S. institutions. It's Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, and Citi. I mean, these are not small companies. These are not insignificant statements. And I do take a different position, Aaron, than most that say, oh, that's, a contrarian thing that they're talking 3,000, it's time to sell. No, it's not time to sell. That's the world that I used to live in for 25 years. These guys have gotten gold wrong so many times, I can't even count on both hands how many times they've gotten them wrong. So when they're talking 3,000, they might actually be right this time, right? So like let's look at 2016 as an example. Standard Chartered, I think it was, definitely Wells Fargo, a bunch of bigger names were calling for $1,000 gold when we were at 1,100, right? It never happened. So, things get too negative in our sector, I think. And I see that with newsletter writers, I see it with influencers. People are so down. It's like, hey, how about taking a look at the positive? Gold has been extremely resilient ever since you and I met 3 years ago, right? I mean, it's
Mhm.
just been an unbelievable run if you were just to buy gold.
Mhm.
And we broke above that 1575 problematic level, broke above the big round number 2000. And we struggled with 2050 to 2100. We got through that. And then it's just been a blast off year. So, what we've been doing, Aaron, is looking at little gold companies that, aren't followed by analysts really that much and are going to make it because they have good leadership and people that have been doing this a long time. One that comes to mind is First Nordic Metals, FNM in Canada, FNMCF in the States. It's been completely bombed out here. It was trading at 26 cents all day long a couple weeks ago. Then they announced the financing. I think they're getting pretty close to wrapping that up, and that will take some selling pressure off the stock. So I'd encourage people to look at that. It's at 20 cents US right now, so it's come down considerably. I think the deal was, maybe 10% ahead of that, so it's down 10% below the deal price. Companies have to raise money, right? To be able to do it right now in the back of a strong gold year makes sense to me. They've got a JV partner in Agnico AEM, which is probably the best looking, major chart that we own, at least. We own both stocks in full disclosure. But I think AEM is one of those forward thinking partners that will be creative and find ways to help First Nordic, as they move forward. First Nordic already has 3 million ounces plus, identified of gold. I think they're only going to get bigger through acquisitions and or just drilling in 2025. We also like NexGold, which is another name that has been beaten up here, NXGCF in the States. I believe it's NEXG in Canada. I have to double take. Just got off an 11-hour flight, so I'm a little dizzy. But Next Gold is something we really like because of its new deal with Signal Gold. Kevin was an attendee at my conference in Florida, along with Oren from Next Gold's management team, and they both, were telling us, "Hey, look, we had 3 million ounces before the merger was announced. Now with the merger, we're going to be right around 6 million ounces." I think people are misreading the news that says 4.7 million, but when you look at all categories, it's 6 million ounces of gold, and so show me another junior with 6 million ounces that's trading like hardly up at all from the news. In fact, it's down from the news.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I just think that we have some very odd things happening in tax law season right now, Aaron, and people have to hold their nose and buy names like this because as gold continues to rally, people will start doing Google searches, I guarantee you, on little gold stocks that no one's ever heard of before. I saw it happen in 2016. I saw it happen in 2020. You and I both saw it happen in, then in COVID, when people were just euphorically listening to Eric Sprott on a Friday podcast and throwing money at a stock that no one's ever heard of before, just like, some of the smaller names we've talked about in your show before. But I think there's a lot of upside potential here in 2025.
Definitely. So gold gets a lot of attention. What about silver?
Well, I was on the silver team at Sprott for 2016 into 17. I love silver. I've been buying physical silver now for 24 years. I very close to buying some right here, because silver's at 30.75 as we record. It's held $30. We call that making a higher low, Aaron, right? For 11 years, silver couldn't break $30 an ounce. That is ridiculous, but it's true. It broke there with authority this year. It ran up, came back down, ran back up, and now is running back down. But what's important to note on the chart, it's not running back to the 26 support level. That's huge. When you're making a higher low at, say, 29 or 30, you're holding the chart in, and you're also holding that chart in at a higher price point. So we like physical silver a lot right now. In full disclosure, that's our largest holding. I accumulated a lot of silver over the years at low prices. We added to that position this year at 24 an ounce and at 25.01 an ounce in full disclosure as well. Some silver names for your listeners: abrasilver, ABBRF in the States, ABRA in Canada. I just saw John Mindiotis a couple weeks ago at a conference in Europe. John works very hard. Ever since he's been at the helm at ABRA, the stock has done extremely well. That's not coincidence. I think it's good leadership on his part. He's got a lot of skin in the game. So does his management team. But most importantly, in my view, is the project itself. Right? When you look at 258 million ounces of silver, that is a massive deposit in Argentina. I would argue that people don't understand what's happened in Argentina over the last 12 to 24 months in terms of how much better that jurisdiction has gotten. Just take a look at, Google search our Argentinian president, new policies or what have you. I'm not going to get into it right now, but let's just say it's very favorable for a company like AbraSilver that clearly is going to get to the finish line in a few years. And, whether they're the operator or not, who cares? When you have 258 million ounces of silver in a higher silver price market, people are going to want your stock. And I think that's going to happen for them over the next 12 to 24 months. You also mentioned at the onset Aftermath Silver. In full disclosure, we own that. We've talked about it on your show a couple times, at least 3 or 4 times, at much lower prices. I think we've talked about it at 14, 17, 20, and 22, US and price points, and now we're trading at 32. Got hit pretty hard today, down from 35 yesterday. So, it is a volatile silver stock. But again, like AbraSilver, it's got a lot of ounces in the ground. When you're talking like that many ounces in the ground in 2 projects in Chile and Peru, I think you've got a lot of upside. And to me, something like those jurisdictions, as you know, Aaron, have been in the news, not in favorable ways over the last 3 years since we've known each other. I think like both countries have had issues, and I think they both worked through a lot of those issues. So we're trying to find jurisdictions like that, hey, when you look at Peru's GDP, they really need mining. Castillo was very, very disruptive there for a good amount of time, but he's been out of the way now for 22 months. So we just don't see why people still stress out about, things that haven't been an issue for a while. So we still like Aftermath a lot. The tickers on that one, AAG in Canada, AAGFF in the States.
So as it stands, it looks like there's a 50% chance of us getting another rate cut at the Fed's next meeting. Could you give me your opinion, on what's to come or rates in general?
Yeah, I think what's happening with the Fed right now is worth watching. Typically, Aaron, on these meetings, you've got an 80 or 90% probability of one way or the other. Right now, it's a 52% probability of a cut December 19th. So December 19th will be worth watching. I think the market is clearly factoring in that that's going to happen. We'll see. 52% is not 80 or 90%. And then in Q1, the market is clearly anticipating, more cuts. We'll see about that as well, right? Because a lot has happened since the U.S. election, November 5th, and I think the broad market is looking very toppy here. I've said that on a couple times on your show
Mhm.
this year. I haven't been really right on that call, by the way. We're usually pretty good about deciding tops in markets, but to see like the Nasdaq and Tesla and some Nvidia, I mean, a lot of these names have just gone up, unbelievably this year, and we haven't been short any of that, thank God, but we definitely haven't been long it either because we're, mining and energy related investors. So yeah, I think, always keep an eye on the Fed. Even in a Trump world, a lot of people are gaming that Donald Trump is going to get rid of, Jerome Powell right away.
Mhm.
He made it very clear November 7th in his last press conference that it's unconstitutional for Trump to just, fire him. So we'll see how it goes. I never put anything past Trump. I think he's gotten a lot of things pushed through in his career as a U.S. president that people weren't expecting, right? So let's just say this: if Trump does get him fired, I think that the Fed will be in much better control for him, like the Supreme Court is. And I think that would be very, very bullish for our sector,
Mhm.
lower rates, right? As well as real estate and things like that, where he has a lot of money invested.
Definitely. Now, one more thing comes to mind before we wrap this up. I gotta ask you, what's your opinion on crypto and Bitcoin before we jump into the last question?
Look, I mean, I've been wrong on crypto. I've been wrong on crypto, Bitcoin. I'm not the right guy to ask about that stuff
Mhm.
because being a value manager and more conservative, I'm looking at, I want regulation. I want that bomb to drop, and then I'm a buyer, right? I wouldn't be a buyer on day one or day two,
Mhm.
but I would want to see the dust settle, see how, people play that. I mean, Trump's obviously looking at buying some Bitcoin assets right now. I just read today. I mean, he and people like Musk have probably quite a bit of their wealth in something like that. I don't know the exact numbers, but it just it's something that's very viable. But I worry about hot money always, Aaron. And
Mhm.
this year we saw a lot of ETFs allow the average investor into a sector like that, right? Which is very positive, but then you have to realize that you've got a lot of novice people in that sector. There aren't a lot of novice people in things like gold, in my opinion. You have a lot of real, wealth that's in gold for various reasons. It's not to have the kind of wonderful year that we have had. That's sort of a
Mhm.
byproduct of owning gold is when you have a breakout year like this, you're thrilled. But you didn't go into this year thinking, man, I hope my goal's up 30%, right? I mean, I think that's how Bitcoin investors think. The ones that I've met at conferences are like looking for 30, 50, 100% gains from where their entry point is. That's just not really realistic a lot of times in the metals world.
So when it comes to individual companies, what are some of the other names that you're looking at right now?
Yeah. So in no particular order, as value managers, like we just said, we look for things that are mispriced, and that could be in a number of different areas. We talked gold and silver. This one is gold and copper. Nevgold, NAUFF in the States. It's a U.S. play with multiple projects. We met with them at Beaver Creek 2 months ago. We added at slightly higher prices than here. The current price is around 16 cents US. But we think a project like that will do better in 2025. We think a lot of US assets, Aaron, are going to do better in 2025, which is again a contrarian opinion, especially going into the election. But now I think people are getting that memo and saying, oh, yeah, Trump is going to have our back in terms of protecting projects. If you don't believe me, take a look at Trilogy Metals TMQ, which is an Alaskan project that had no hope in a Biden world, I don't think. And the stock's gone up exponentially since Trump has been elected, right? So we're also looking at special situation type opportunities. We saw some really odd news this past weekend in China with regards to tungsten and other critical minerals. We love Guardian Metal Resources here at 35 cents US. slightly lower perhaps today. GMTLF in the States and GMET.L in London. Doesn't have a Canadian ticker, but if you talk to your Canadian advisor, I bet there's a way to buy it on one of those two exchanges. You just have to, discuss that with your advisor and see if it's right for you. The reason it's right for us is a number of things. They basically have the largest land package in tungsten in the US, period. So when you look at a 35-cent stock owning that much land that's tungsten rich, and they've drilled a lot this year, that's attractive. What's secondly attractive is that they just announced a few weeks ago that they're going to be buying another project in the US. And now they have even much more of a stronghold in the US, right? And thirdly, they have probably some grant money coming this year or next year. I mean, when you look at the DoD and what they're facing, right? When you look at that Chinese news, I think it was November, let's see, whatever that Saturday was, 16th or 17th. The DoD is going to have to counter that with some positive news, which is grants usually to little companies like this. Another one that we follow in Canada, Fireweed, FWEDF, might be also getting some of this kind of money, right? And it just seems to me like if your market cap is really small and you're getting a large check handed to you that's non-dilutive, how is that not good news, right? I mean, that's the kind of stuff we look at in special situations. Lastly, I think uranium stocks, are just trading really wonky. A lot of the small stuff is trading off. But then a lot of the big stuff is making 52-week highs. It's very weird. For example, we own Denison DNN. We almost sold it all today at 238 a share US because it's hitting resistance, right? But we would deploy that money back into some uranium names that are completely beaten up. We've been tracking Peninsula here for the last couple of weeks, PENMF in the States, or PEN, depending on where you're located. Stock's gone from 6.5 to 4 cents, and I think it traded under 4 cents today, US. And they're going into production in January in Wyoming, by the way, not the Congo. So, it's like unbelievable value. But also Forum Energy, FDCFF, which we mentioned on your program before, we think that they're going to come out with drill results this month, next month, who cares? It's coming. They've already spent a lot of money in the program. Rick's been in the business 40 years. Rebecca's a great geo in the field. I think they're going to get it done, and they're trading at 7 cents US, right? So, when I say they're going to get it done, does that mean the stock goes from 7 to 30 cents? No, it means the stock could go from 7 to 10 cents or 7 to 11 cents. You make a ton of money on a percentage basis in a very short period of time. So, we look for high probability wins like that, Aaron, all day long. And we look for limited downside risk, and I think some of the stocks we mentioned today have pretty limited downside risk given where they are in the cycle.
Awesome. We'll be watching those stocks for sure. It's always a pleasure to have you on, John. Thank you for all your knowledge, and I look forward to chatting again.
Thanks, Aaron.